Briefly, Your Honor, I received notice yesterday from the court, the day before, that this would be set for hearing on Friday. It's my understanding the allegations in the 15A are that the defendant left his house. The court had placed very strict orders on the defendant in his rules, specifically condition number 14, that he was not to leave the inside of the residence. Between 12:28 and 12:58 on Wednesday morning, the 3rd, the defendant absconded from his residence across the street on Center Ridge Road. I have Interlock, Ohio here to show when he had left, the time he had left, to show that the system was in working order, and returned afterwards. At that point, I was told the hearing was set and to be here.
Yes.
Can you state your name and spell your last name for the record, please?
Julie, last name is Adams, A-D-A-M-S.
And where are you employed, ma'am?
I'm an independent contractor for Ohio Interlock.
What is Ohio Interlock?
We are a GPS and alcohol monitoring company.
Okay. And as a GPS monitoring company, do you perform functions for probation in the court?
Yes.
Specifically Lorraine County, Ohio Court?
Yes.
And do you have interaction with a Daniel Kovarbasich?
Yes.
And how did that come about?
Daniel was placed under house arrest, so he was hooked up with the ankle monitor that tracks his movement.
And how accurate is that ankle monitor?
Within 10 feet.
And is he monitored continuously?
Yes.
And if he were to abscond from the area where he is supposed to stay, what do you do?
We get notification via, the monitoring center gets an instant notification via an email that he has left his residence. And then what we do is we actually get tracking points to see where his movement is. So we have an event log that shows the time that he left and the time that he returned home, as well as tracking points showing that he was outside of his home.
On Wednesday, August 3rd, did there come a point where Daniel had left his home?
Yes.
Okay. And what time was that?
He had left his home at 12:28 a.m.
And how do you know that?
From the documentation, from the tracking points, and from the event log for that day.
And you have, I would like to mark, the event log is States Exhibit 1, and you also brought a map that has the tracking points as well?
Correct.
And that's States Exhibit 2. If you could show the judge the points on the tracking log and then on the map that you're talking about where he was.
Sure. This is all about history, and I did it for a 5-day period, and I have maps for a 5-day period as well, just the day of question. This actually shows us the time that he left the home on the 3rd at 12:28 a.m. This one shows us the time that he returned back home at 12:58 a.m. And then this is the mapping showing that we did mapping here from 12 to 1 a.m. And you'll see if it was in motion, you'd be able to see him leave the house. All of these tracking points are outside of his home and then return back to his home.
Very well. So it it appears from the diagram that the defendant crossed Center Ridge Road.
Correct.
So with the global positioning monitor, you can actually see where he's walking if you're looking at it at that time?
Correct. The arrows indicate which direction he was facing that the monitor tracked him. So it shows movement in numerous different directions in the area across the street.
Thank you very much.
How does this GPS technology work?
As far as?
Well, how does the machine, I'm talking about the science of it. How does the machine read where an individual is at any given point in time?
The ankle transmitter is satellite-based, so it's getting all tracking based via satellite, and then it relays information through cell connection through a computer program.
Okay, so is it kind of the same technology that would be used as like a GPS in your car?
Yes.
Okay. And how long have you been working for Ohio Interlock, or been in the GPS business?
About 2.5 years.
Okay. Have you ever had an occasion where a machine has malfunctioned?
Yes, for various reasons.
Okay, what are some of those various reasons?
If a unit won't hold the charge would be a reason. I've got to think, because this is a different unit that I'm used to. A different unit had different situations.
So you're not very familiar with the unit that was on Mr. Google?
Oh no, I'm very familiar with it, but I used a different unit as well that had different things that could have gone wrong with it. This one's much more simplistic because it's a one-piece unit. There are units out there that are two-piece units that have more malfunction capabilities because they're two pieces of equipment, where this one just has one. Really, the only thing that I've seen with this was it holding a charge.
Okay. Well, I noticed when Prosecutor Sill asked me, you had looked for a mechanical malfunction. How do you know whether it's a mechanical malfunction?
I just went through to make sure that the equipment was working properly and that we established tracking points on a consistent basis and that there was no loss in tracking, and there was no loss in tracking.
So assuming that the machine was working properly, there was no problem?
Right, I mean, we've got continual tracking points. The event log shows all of his history that there was no malfunction with the equipment.
Okay. You didn't witness Mr. Kovarbasich cross Senator Road at 12:50 a.m. that morning, did you?
No, I did not.
Okay, you're just basing this off of the tracking points of the piece of paper in front of you?
That is correct.
Okay. Have you ever had occasion or learned of any situation where a GPS would register, one of these units, or any unit for that matter, would register somebody as being someplace that they're not?
No, I mean, the only thing that you might get would be a satellite jump. If the satellite were to jump, you would just have one tracking point. You would have his tracking point at home. You would have one tracking point where the satellite jumped outside of his residence, and then you would see him instantly back. You can tell a satellite jump by the speed. Satellite jumps are typically 300 some miles per hour. That wasn't the case with Mr. Kovarbasich.
How do you know whether it's a mechanical malfunction?
I just went through to make sure that the equipment was working properly and that we established tracking points on a consistent basis and that there was no loss in tracking, and there was no loss in tracking.
So assuming that the machine was working properly, there was no problem?
Right, I mean, we've got continual tracking points. The event log shows all of his history that there was no malfunction with the equipment.
Okay. You didn't witness Mr. Kovarbasich cross Senator Road at 12:50 a.m. that morning, did you?
No, I did not.
Okay, you're just basing this off of the tracking points of the piece of paper in front of you?
That is correct.
Okay. Have you ever had occasion or learned of any situation where a GPS would register, one of these units, or any unit for that matter, would register somebody as being someplace that they're not?
No, I mean, the only thing that you might get would be a satellite jump. If the satellite were to jump, you would just have one tracking point. You would have his tracking point at home. You would have one tracking point where the satellite jumped outside of his residence, and then you would see him instantly back. You can tell a satellite jump by the speed. Satellite jumps are typically 300 some miles per hour. That wasn't the case with Mr. Kovarbasich.
If the unit isn't holding a charge, that, the way I understand it, is that you can't monitor him. It wouldn't indicate that he had left the house.
If his unit completely dies,
Yes.
what happens is you receive a little battery warning first, saying that your battery is going dead, and you have about a half an hour to 45 minutes to cure that before you lose power to your unit. Once you lose power to the unit, correct, there's no tracking capabilities.
But you wouldn't allege a breach if the battery was low, because you wouldn't have a tracking point.
Right, because he's not correct.
I'd entertain a probable cause hearing and convenience of the party. I don't know if bail was set or not, Attorney Sill, but you could reflect that electronically monitored house arrest is terminated.
Okay. All right, I will do that. Bond is revoked, defendant is remanded, and electronic monitoring is terminated.